People who have gone out for a pack of cigarettes and never went back to your family. What happened after you left? I grew up in a very abusive, strict home. My stepfather beat both my sisters, and then when they left I was next. Anyways, one night he made me walk home from the mall because he wouldn't give me a ride. I called and asked around 5 and he said you better have your ass home at 5. I walked the 8 miles and was pretty wiped out when I was coming up the driveway. We had a big front window and I saw him sitting in his chair drinking whiskey waiting for me. When I walked in he said something and I replied you won't do shit. The next thing I knew he had me pinned to the wall and punched me in the face until I was knocked out. When I woke up I remember feeling the blood from my nose and my mother was standing there and told me I was a disgrace to go clean my face off. I went upstairs and grabbed a hat and walked out and never went back. I was 14 years old at the time. Edit, Gold. Thank you kind strangers. Half answer. My dad died when I was pretty young. My mom eventually remarried to a pretty cool guy when I was young. He was honestly an amazing dad. And when my mom got sick when I was 12, he was absolutely incredible, taking care of everyone, and reaffirming that I was his son. When my mom died, it was just me and him for a few years, and there were some amazing times. He made sure I was seeing a counselor, and we did family things on the weekend. My friends used to joke that he wasn't even my biological dad and he still made more time for me, and did more things for me than their bio dads did. When I was 15, he got remarried. I didn't exactly like my new stepmom, but I didn't hate her. I think I just thought that the relationship wouldn't last and he'd move on to someone better. Then they got married and it was kinda weird. I did get an amazing baby brother from that, not all bad. My dad died when I was 17. Literally taken out by an undiagnosed severe allergy. My stepmom got me from school and drove me to the hospital, and when my dad passed away, she handed me my baby brother and said she needed a minute by herself. I never saw her again. She was much younger than my dad, and was an ex-foster kid with no family or best friends to support her, and I think she looked at her newborn baby and the kid her dead husband inherited and just couldn't handle it. I sure know I wasn't prepared to handle it, but my mom and my biological dad had been ex-foster care kids and mom told me a few fucked stories, so I wasn't going to let that happen to me or my brother. I do sometimes feel a little resentful that I can't have the normal life. I'm working too much, and I have a 6-year-old to figure out, to consider college, but I don't want my family to just be cycles of poverty and dead-end jobs. Edit. Wow guys. I'm touched by the response. I have full custody. My stepdad adopted me when my mom died, so for all intents and purposes, my brother is legally my brother. Afraid I can't give too many details. I want to adopt him and there's a court case or two that I don't want to compromise just in case. Movies have told me that anyway. Stepmom will probably be charged with abandonment when she can be located, but so far we haven't heard anything. I've always been worried that she had a mental health break and either killed herself. I used to call up locally and ask for Jane Does that fit her, hey coping mechanisms, right? Or she's had a mental health break and something snapped. Abandonment didn't really fit what I knew of her, and I remember that she had some kind of mental health problems. It's not like we talked about it though. She could have gone off her meds in the chaos and snapped. I'm more worried than angry, but my first concern will always be for my favorite little tyke. We are doing pretty well. We have a support worker who has been fantastic, helping us get access to free and reduced cost services. I'm also pretty thrifty. I YouTubed how to knit socks and fix clothing, and thrift stores are great. I don't live near a major city, and so it's not as expensive as it could have been. Being frugal also helps. There's usually always good stuff out there if you know how to ask for help, and my dad always told me the hardest thing but the most important thing to do was to suck up your pride and ask for help. I'm getting better about that, but it's hard. My dad making me do therapy helped a bunch to admit when I need help. He said that needing help wasn't about not being capable, but about being smart. That if you're carrying an expensive TV you could carry it by yourself, but you're smarter if you grab a friend. I'm almost finished an apprenticeship right now, and I'm in a union that's decent enough that wives used to drop off casseroles and leave cribs and stuff on our porch. Everyone should be involved in their community. I wouldn't have survived without everyone willing to go to bat for me. I'm working pretty hard because I'm incredibly fortunate that I met good people along the way. I owe them a lot. I also work part-time at a nursery helping with plants and stuff on weekends for the staff discount and free stuff. I taken home more than a few half-dead fruit trees and vegetable seedlings. The more I work, the more I can throw into savings. It's morbid, but I want to make sure if I die, he's not frantically worrying about paying for that. It's not exactly a good feeling. My bro and I have been working on expanding our tiny garden to try and offset the cost of food, and he seems to like gardening just as much as my dad did. Last year we didn't buy a single potato or any herbs. It's been the best low-cost high-involved activity we're doing, and it sometimes makes me feel less guilty that I can't be there more for him like our dad was for me. We have glass pasta jars and tin cans growing basil and rosemary right now. I told my bro if he can keep them alive all year without me needing to intervene, we can look at adopting chickens. He specifically wants 2 chickens named Chic Ken and Chic Barbie because he's funnier than I am. I'm working a bunch now because I want him to be in a better position in the future. My dad left a small, but decent amount in a trust, and I pulled from it when I first got custody when I was scrambling to afford everything. I want to replace everything I took, and also make sure he can afford to do the things that I couldn't when growing up. When he's in high school and wants to celebrate by going to Mexico, then he's going to Mexico. I do miss the stuff I can't do. I've never not had responsibilities. I'm still friends with people from school, and they're doing cross-country adventures and dropping money on expensive stuff. It's such a weird idea that they can just go to music festivals without worrying about anything while I'm trying to find a detergent that doesn't set the bros eczema off. Wouldn't trade him for the world though. We have saving accounts and insurance policies, and I'm probably better off than a lot of people. The comments have been incredible with people offering help from everywhere. I needed that help when I was 17 and scared out of my absolute mind. I'm almost 24 now and I'm stable, but paranoid and weird for sure. If you'd like to donate, please direct them to local organizations fighting the good fight. The difficult part of the story is basically over, until he hits teenage years probably. God knows how I'm going to handle that. That's a problem for future me. I don't need that kind of help anymore, and I'm moving into the phase of life where I just want to give back to people that have helped me, by passing it on. I joined Reddit because I saw the post that said today you, tomorrow me. That's my philosophy in life. There are a lot of people out there like me, and they deserve to be able to grow garlic in old jams with their family just as much as I did. When I was 5, my dad came home from work, and my mom informed him out, completely of the blue, that she wanted an immediate divorce. I found out many years later she'd had an affair and was pregnant. He moved out of the house. They had 3 little kids together. I was the oldest, and she married her second husband, twice. They weren't divorced the first time. He was paying child support as he was supposed to, but she was calling him at work and sending him letters at home. His sister kept them, asking for more, and he began to get complaints about it from his bosses. He asked his mother what he should do. She advised him to tell her he was giving her all he could, and all he was ordered to, and that he was going to lose his job if she kept it up. And, that if she didn't stop, he'd leave the state, and she'd never hear from him again. She thought that would make her wise up and leave him alone. So, he did. But she continued. So, he asked his mother for advice again. Her advice was to follow through. And so, he did. He packed his clothes into his car, and headed for Canada. He got as far as 2 states north from where he began, liked the little town he came across, and got a job there. I never forgot him. I was the only one of the 3 of us kids that had any memories of him. But when I was 16 and moved away from my extremely abusive home, in every way, I called my aunt, whose name I knew, who happened to live in the town I was also then living in, and told her I wanted to meet him. Coincidentally, he happened to be visiting her. I met him, my aunt, my grandfather, and my grandmother while he was there. It turned out to be the only time I would ever meet my grandfather. He died 2 years later. But I will never, ever forget it. He wrapped me up in a big, strong bear hug, told me how beautiful I was, how much he loved me, and how much he'd always loved me, and how very, very happy he was to see me again after all these years. I cried then, and I'm crying again now, writing it down. I can still feel the love and caring in his arms. I wasn't ready to get to know my dad at 16 though. I realize now that I just wanted to see him. It took me another 10 years before I contacted him again. But I did, when I was living in California. And when I did, he took 2 weeks vacation, so did I, drove down to see me, and we spent the entire 2 weeks getting to know one another. And once he left, we were in contact daily. And I quit my job and moved up to the PNW a month later, because I knew the hole in my heart would never be filled until my dad was a part of my life. And I was correct. My son has a grandpa because of my decision, and my dad is the greatest grandpa there is. I wish he'd have always been in my life, but the outcome I received is worth everything I've been through. I love you, Dad. 3. I was a toddler. 2 or so. After 9/11 my mother moved up to Vermont with her boyfriend who, for what it is worth, is now in federal prison for first-degree murder of another girlfriend. As that indicates he wasn't a good guy. He wouldn't let me drink water unless I'd eaten a full meal, and I was 2, so my mother had to serve fruit with every meal so I'd have moisture and let me drink water while he was at work. On days he didn't work she and I would go out and explore as much as we could. We took to cleaning up old overgrown graveyards, since it was interesting and fun and most importantly time-consuming. But he was very controlling and didn't want us to leave. She didn't have a car so we had to walk everywhere. Being from Mencia and with no ability to purchase a train ticket because he controlled all her finances and she didn't have a phone, she was forced to use a payphone to contact my grandparents to fly up and come rescue us and fly us back. And had to tune it with his work schedule to make sure he wasn't there when they came because she thought he might try to hurt me if he saw them come to take us. Didn't leave my wife and kids as I don't have any, but I did walk out on my mother and siblings without any notice. Dad was not in the picture. After? Best decision of my life. My mother refuses treatment for her very serious mental illness or illnesses and was incredibly abusive physically as well and neglectful while I was growing up. I saw the effect it had burn out older siblings with no motive or drive and instead embraced the crazy just to feel sane in the toxic family home we lived in. I was homeless for about a year and a half living out of a duffel and bumming food from friends. I feel like my life hasn't even started until I left it behind. I feel like it held me back for 17 years and I now am finally being able to find out who I am. Mom never came looking for me. I reconnected with my estranged father, whom I learned was in the military from the moment he was 18 until he was HD at 43. He has severe PTSD from his 3 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's now getting his master's in outdoors leadership, which I believe is a perfect way to use his massive skill set. I don't see him much if ever, but at least I know some blood is still thicker than water. I was 10 years old when my mom and dad split up. We had been expecting it, but I didn't know that my mom had packed up suitcases for herself, my sister, and I. One day we went to school like everything was normal, and went to my mom's parents after school. It wasn't unusual for us to have dinner there. But then Mom sat us down and told us we'd be staying there for a while. Ended up being 6 years before we got our own place. I never got to go back to my bedroom again. My dad got remarried and his wife's daughter moved in and repainted my room. When I had to visit them I slept on the couch while she slept in my room. Edit: I clearly do not check Reddit enough. Thank you for all the love and support everyone is showing to everyone. And thank you for the silver kind stranger's smile. My real dad ghosted like 4 families. His first family, he had a son. He was in that family for 13 years, his son had a motorcycle wreck and ended up in intensive care. A year later he ghosted that family and moved to a new state. Just up and left, didn't take anything but his clothes and his car. Second family, he had a daughter. He left almost immediately. Then he moved to another state, and married another woman, and had 2 more kids whom I've never met or spoken to. Don't even know their names tbh. Jake? John? Jordan? Josh? Something with a J. He went out for a pack of smokes and never went back, his own words. Then he met my mom, and had my sister first. He ghosted my mom 3.2 years later, then showed up for some quick whoopee, and I happened. He ghosted her, but didn't leave the state. She called the cops and my first memory is of the cops bringing my dad to the house in cuffs and letting him go, only for him to attack my mom while she was holding me and she dropped me. Then the cops arrested him. He wanted out, he got out. He had 2 more marriages, but no kids. It's his mo to shack up with well-off women and mooch until they either kick him out or he gets bored. It's really fucking painful to see, Because I want to be an ass-wiping dad who's there for his kids every fucking second of their lives. I want to be the exact opposite of him.